Bülent Çavaş from Inter-Islamic Network on Oceanography. I am the moderator of this event. It is a great honor for me to welcome you for the 6th version of latest developments on Marine Science Symposium series of Inter-Islamic Network on Oceanography, which bring together policymakers, scientists, science and university educators and researchers. The Inter-Islamic Network on Oceanography, shortly INOC, was created in 1989 by the Standing Committee on Scientific and Technological Cooperation, COMSTECH, to extend and improve marine science and technology through the Islamic world. Today, INOC is a network of marine science institutions, foundation companies working together to promote marine science and technology around the world. INOC facilitates communication and cooperation at national, regional, and international levels. In this special symposium, we will focus on climate change. As you know, the Earth surrounds by oceans, and oceans play a critical role in regulating the climate. But we need to ask to ourselves, how healthy are oceans today? Our 8 distinguished guests today will share their knowledge and experiences to inform us about the state of our ocean with us, so that we will learn how scientists are doing to help ocean healthy and productive. I am so pleased to be with you today and to have the chance to invite INOC President, Professor Dr. Shermin Açıkçınar, to give her opening speech. Madam President, floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear scientists and participants, on behalf of Inter-Islamic Network on Oceanography, I would like to express my sincere gratitude and welcome you to the 6th latest developments on Marine Symposium series. Moreover, I would like to very welcome our invited speakers. It's my hope that the 6th event will be able to achieve its objective in providing effective forum for academicians and researchers to advancing knowledge and research for marine sciences. In this event, we will listen to scientists talks about climate change and their effects on marine ecosystems, and they will share their knowledge and experiences for the marine science field. I believe that such networking activities will positively affect research opportunities and effective collaboration in the field of marine sciences among Islamic countries. Climate change, which is thought to be caused by the increasing greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere because of human activities, threatens life on Earth. The use of fossil fuels, increases in electricity and heat production, the development of industry, agricultural activities, and deforestation are the leading anthropogenic effects of climate change. Climate change negatively affects biological diversity, such as ecosystems, species, and gene resources, as well as socioeconomic. This environmental problem we live in has reached such an important dimension that, in the light of scientific studies that reveal the seriousness of the situation, every country in the world needs to take certain preventive measures and fulfill its responsibilities. I would like to thank the following institutions for their contribution to the realization of this event: COMSTECH, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation's Standing Committee on Scientific and Technological Cooperation, UNESCO, based in Office, China, Dokuz Eylül University, Turkey, Middle East Technical University, Turkey, University Malaysia, Terengganu, Malaysia, University Putra, Malaysia, Malaysia, Said Beheshti University, Iran. INOC is a scientific and educational platform that you can collaborate outstanding researchers who work on marine sciences. In this context, we are pleased to see the development processes of projects based on scientific collaborations by different countries. For that reason, I suggest you to keep visiting INOC web page and social media account to join the INOC network and get detailed information about research, education, and collaboration opportunities. I wish you a very productive event with exciting and inquiring discussions and exchange of knowledge so that together we can anticipate a future of groundbreaking knowledge and research for marine sciences. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for your opening speech. Now we can start our symposium. Before introduction to the first speaker, I would like to remind you that the participants can send all of their questions to the Zoom chat box. We will collect all of them at the end of all presentations. We will ask them to the speakers. So we can now start our symposium. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce our first speaker. He is Professor Shahbaz Khan. Before going to his presentation, I'd like to give you information about Dr. Khan's academic background. Professor Shahbaz Khan is the director of the UNESCO office in Beijing and UNESCO representative to Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Japan, Mongolia, People's Republic of China, and the Republic of Korea. Professor Khan joined UNESCO in 2008 at its headquarters as Chief of the Water and Sustainable Development Section. He has worked in Australia, France, Indonesia, and Pakistan in various research consultancy and policy positions around hydrology and sustainable development. His work has been widely recognized. For example, he awarded in 2019 for China Friendship Award and awarded for Great Wall Friendship China in 2017. Professor Khan holds a Hon Doctorate Environment and Development from National University of Malaysia and Hon DSc from the University of Birmingham. Dr. Shahbaz Khan, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Professor Brulin. Thank you for an excellent introduction and this wonderful symposium. And I welcome your contributions to UNESCO science education for a long period of time and for this very important area. And it's a pleasure listening to the President, INOC, and she has put everything in the right context. So I will be very brief in introducing some of the related work of UNESCO. And I'm so happy to see wonderful colleagues who are going to give in-depth scientific analysis of the related areas. As have been introduced, I'm now based in Beijing, today on a holiday in Pakistan, which is my home country. And I will be talking to you from my home internet. So if there is any problem, I apologize in advance. So it has been clearly demonstrated by scientific analysis, climate change is a threat to our well-being. And if you look into any kind of data whatsoever, it's very clear that what we are having is caused by human elements more than the natural elements. So there is this IPCC report on climate change 2021, which is a very strong basis for policymakers to think about what can we do to make this world a better place. And as we are talking to scientists, I wouldn't go into more scientific details here. Continuing with this analysis, and I will be focusing on Asia-Pacific region today, that because of the climate change, the rising temperatures, there are different kind of impacts which we are experiencing in terms of heat, in terms of cold, drought, snow, ice, precipitation, flooding, as well as fires. So all of them are very familiar to us. In this region, what we call East Asia or Southeast Asia or Pacific and Caribbean region, we have many, many serious impacts, especially if we think about the East Asia, hotter, lesser snow and ice. And also, if we look into where is Southeast Asia, that region where we have Indonesia, Malaysia, and the ASEAN countries, we have a lot of issues related to heat, flooding, and related areas. And where I am today in Pakistan, as you know, is experiencing flooding again and again, also heat waves again and again, and we are still struggling. So this is from the IPCC's 6th Assessment Cycle Report 2022, so quite new knowledge. Also, how different ecosystems are being impacted. That's very important for us to know. So today you are concentrating on oceans as well as climate change. So if we look into the issues related to the corals or mangroves or fisheries, all of them have been impacted in different ways, and certainly from moderate to high to very high impacts because of the global warming. So we are in a completely different era than we used to be before scientifically. So there is a very big role for science to play here. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, in United Nations, climate change has caught the attention of the member states and especially from the highest levels of leadership. So UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has put it in a very clear way that we have a triple emergency: biodiversity loss, climate disruption, and pollution. So climate change is a threat to our existence. We have to work together to manage the impacts. So you know about United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and different people have given different analysis, but certainly linking with the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction and the climate agreement, the Paris Climate Agreement. If we think about biosphere, society, and economy as being interconnected part of achieving these goals, then biosphere, certainly with the SDG number 14 with the oceans, which we discussed today, the life on land, which is the SDG number 15, and then climate change number 13, and the water, the fresh water as 6. So biosphere have to work together to support the society and economy. And that's where we need smarter science, we need better policy, and we need more investments. And that's where the area of education, which I highlighted before, Professor Bullen's leadership within the science education, SDG 4, very, very important. And all of that leading to international cooperation, SDG number 17. Dear colleagues, if we think about climate resilient development and where is the role of the oceans and where is the role of the science, very important for us to note is that we have to bring socio-economic, ecological, economic, with the political arena and the knowledge arenas together. So most of our work in this university, academia, research institutions, but how do we link properly with the political, socio-economic, ecological, and economic arenas? Only then we will be able to move towards climate resilient. And in most countries, these links are broken, and there is ecological degradation, there is a disempowerment, there is social injustice, and there are greater challenges for this society. So I think this is a very fine analysis which can guide our discussion. In UNESCO, we have the climate change as a key area, as a cross-cutting area, which links with our priority on gender, Africa, small islands and developing states, and especially engaging with the youth. We say it's not about climate change, it's not about changing climates, but it's about changing the mindset. We are working on the areas of observing, monitoring, assessing, and early warning, including oceans, and promoting adaptation and mitigation to climate change and moving towards carbon neutral world, starting from UNESCO. Also, I would like to draw to your attention that natural sciences with social sciences, we need to work on the ethical principles related to climate change adopted by 195 states of the United Nations, of UNESCO, and we are working closely with UNFCCC and IPCC. How do we bring the ethical principle to prevent harm? How do we bring scientific knowledge with integrity? And how do we bring global solidarity, sustainability, social justice? And as you know, the loss and damage, which was the new approach which was approved at the last COP, is part of the ethical principles of climate change. The nations which are on the receiving ends versus the nations which are responsible for climate change. Coming to today's topic on climate change, and I see a number of colleagues will be talking about blue carbon related matters. The UNESCO office Beijing, we are working very closely on the blue carbon ecosystem. We recently had a major conference in Japan on blue carbon. And in blue carbon, as you know, there are very important areas of mangroves, tidal marshes, algae, marine sediments, phytoplanktons, and so on. So basically 83% of the global carbon cycle is circulated through the oceans, which I'm sure you are very much aware. And only 2% of the coastal habitats are covering 2% of the total area of the ocean, very important places. And the sediment blue carbon is very, very important, like if we look into any balances for the blue carbon systems. So it certainly links with a number of SDGs, from no poverty to food security to better health and so on. But very importantly, linking SDG 14 on oceans and climate change on 13, and also looking into sustainable societies for providing decent jobs as well. So if we think about now the issue of mangroves, which is a special area which we are working right now in my office with a number of countries. So in terms of the distribution of the mangroves, more than 50% of the world's mangroves are in Indonesia, Brazil, Nigeria, Australia, and Mexico. And they can store a lot more carbon than what can be stored by the trees, as you know, or by the forests. So mangroves represent big areas in South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. These red areas which are shown here, and the Pacific Islands. So they are a very important part of our equation towards climate change. But they are facing a number of threats, from logging, from agriculture, from aquaculture, from pollution, from expanding cities, as well as the issues related to tourism and issues related to the coastal expansion. So mangrove losses are a significant threat to the carbon balance of the planet. So this is a picture from 2006 to 2016. If we look into the mangrove loss by different drivers like natural or human-driven, global versus Southeast Asia versus outside Southeast Asia, one thing you can notice is that from 2000 to 2005, there was a lot of loss from natural and human-driven factors for mangrove losses, including climate change. But over a period of time, there is lesser and lesser loss. Maybe it's a good news, but in fact, there are no more mangroves left, which would be lost in many of these areas. So it's a very grave picture. So there are huge restoration opportunities for mangroves, and we can bring the carbon credits, carbon markets, and local communities with the ecosystem-based services approaches for restoring, for planting mangroves. And this is an area which is highlighted here, including the South China Sea, including the Southeast Asia, right up to Australia and the small islands. So this is an area where we are focusing about these mangroves. Ladies and gentlemen, as part of mitigation and adaptation, blue carbon has become a very important part of United Nations work. And UNESCO has the UNESCO Intergovernmental Oceanography Commission, which is very much aligned to the work which you are prescribing, you are doing, and you are working together. And we are working on mangroves, salt marshes, and seagrasses. And this area is of great importance to the member states of UNESCO. Also, our World Heritage Program, our World Heritage sites represent a major part of the response to climate change, and especially in coastal areas, by building resilience of coral reefs, by researching on the right scientific areas, and addressing the climate-related science, and also this Blue Carbon Initiative. Also, we are very actively promoting publications in marine world heritage as the custodians of the global blue carbon assets. So I strongly encourage you to look into our publications. They are open access publications. We have 50 marine sites represented into many of these publications, and the work which can lead to better conservation and better world together. With that, I thank you. I look forward to continue to link with you and listen from your wonderful network. How can we link from here in China with you and from the greater UNESCO? I thank again Professor Bulent for persisting. I must come and link with you. Thank you very much.
Dear Shahbaz, thank you very much for your presentation and comments. Again, thank you very much for joining us today. I would like to kindly invite second speaker, who is Professor Dr. Şükrü Beşiktepe. I am personally looking forward to listening his presentation, but before going to his presentation, let me inform you about his academic background. Professor Dr. Şükrü Beşiktepe holds a PhD in physical oceanography in 1991 in Middle East Technical University, Turkey. He worked at Middle East Technical University Institute of Marine Sciences between 1983 and 2006, Harvard University between 1996 and 2001 for various periods, and NATO Undersea Research Laboratory, La Spezia, Italy, as head of Modeling and Prediction Group during 2007 and 2010. Since May 2010, he has been serving as a professor of physical oceanography in the Institute of Marine Sciences and Technology of Dokuz University. He served as executive secretary of Black Sea GOOS, collaborating with international organizations active in the Black Sea region. He was the member of the European Marine Observation and Data Expert Group and executive secretary of Turkish Navigation, Hydrography, and Oceanography Coordination Assembly. Dr. Beşiktepe's research interests include combining observations and dynamical models to attain coupled physical and biogeochemical dynamical processes in semi-enclosed seas, with particular emphasis given to the Black Sea, Mediterranean, and Sea of Marmara. Dr. Şükrü Beşiktepe, floor is yours. Şükrü Hocam, mikrofonunuz açık değil sanırım.
Oops, sorry for that. Thank you very much, Professor Çavaş, for introducing me. And I also would like to thank to INOC for inviting me to make a presentation in this very important topic and symposium. In my talk, I will talk about how the climate change is affecting the Mediterranean Sea physical dynamics and how the Mediterranean playing a role in the regulating the world ocean, the global climate system. When we talk about the climate change, actually, if you look at there a few years ago, there was a survey published about the review of articles published in peer-reviewed scientific journals, show that more than 97% of the actively publishing climate scientists believe that climate change and global warming are an undeniable fact. And the trend of global warming increased over the past century is most likely due to human activities. This is already how the climate, human playing a role in the climate change and how it is affecting the human being are mentioned by the previous speakers. Although the global climate crisis indicates the general warming, the severity of warming will not be the same all over the world, depending on the dynamics of the regions, and will show different effects, especially on the ocean. The effect of atmospheric warming, which is we call the climate change, especially we mean the atmospheric warming. The effect of this atmospheric warming in the ocean will be dependent on the air-sea interaction process, how this process is occurring, and the internal dynamics of the ocean. In my talk, I will present you how climate change manifesting itself in the Mediterranean and how these changes can influence the global climate change. Before my talk, I would like to give you a brief introduction to the Mediterranean. Mediterranean Sea is actually act as a chemical reactor for the world ocean waters. How this happens, and if you can see my pointer, ocean waters from the Atlantic comes into the Mediterranean as a surface water and travels all the way to the end of the Mediterranean. And in the Mediterranean, evaporation is greater than the precipitation, and these waters become saltier during its journey, and the saltier and warmer and sinks at the end of the Eastern Mediterranean. It sinks down, and then it goes all the way to back to the Atlantic Ocean. And here in the Atlantic Ocean, we observe it as the saltier anomaly around the 1,000 and 1,500 meters. If you look at this general thermohaline circulation, it is actually the mimic to the conveyor belt system of the world oceans. And in this is the one, another thing, it's one of the deep water formation sites in the world. If you look at the world ocean circulation, there is a deep water formation in the northern pole, North Pole, South Pole, and the 3.3 regions in the Mediterranean. In this configuration, the Mediterranean Sea is always considered as a miniature ocean. And the one of the most important issue in the world climate effect of the climate change in the ocean is everybody worrying about how this conveyor belt will change, and then which plays a very important role in the regulating the world climate. And the small changes in this conveyor belt, or Atlantic meridional thermohaline circulation, will affect the world climate drastically. That's why, but very difficult to observe the conveyor belt as a whole. And the Mediterranean, first of all, can play a role on the understanding how the conveyor belt is operating, and because of its smaller size and easy to observe and easy to study. And if you look at in the Atlantic Ocean, and this is the study about analyzing the olds by Skliris et al. In 2014, analyzing all available data in the world ocean shows that there is an increase in the trend in the vicinity of the Gibraltar Ocean because of the increasing trend of the salinity. in the Mediterranean outflow to the Atlantic. And this increase in salinity in the deep, in 1,000 and 1,500 meter depths is much higher than the other parts of the world ocean. And this is called the Mediterranean effect. And it is known that this salinity, it is the Mediterranean outflow to the Atlantic, is playing a role on the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation. That means in this incoming salinities will change the characteristics of the conveyor belt, which we need to understand well. If we, after this, the introduction on the Mediterranean and what we are looking for as a first, in the first degree for the climate change, and when we talk about the climate change, this is the warming, showing the warming in Turkey, in which we can consider the easternmost part of the Mediterranean. As you will see, it is the Mediterranean is actually called as a hotspot for climate change. And in the global warming is 1.3 degrees centigrade in general, is 1.3 degrees centigrade, but in the Mediterranean, it is already 2.3 centigrade. And it's in the moderate scenario, it will be like a 4 degrees centigrade at the end of this century. And here you can see the different, there is the trend, which is this trend, the slope of the trend is increased after the 1990s dramatically. But at the same time, there are oscillations in different time scales, and there is an interannual variabilities in the changing the atmospheric temperature. And how is the effect on the Mediterranean of this climate change? We can see that here, this is in the Gibraltar Strait, the measurements taken by our Italian colleagues show that the Mediterranean is warming and becoming saltier. Trend observed in the Mediterranean intermediate waters is 0.024 degrees centigrade per year, and the salinity is 0.006 per year. If you compare this with the global ocean, it is the Mediterranean, the trend in the Mediterranean is at least 1 order of magnitude the greater than those reported for the global ocean intermediate layers. And this is warming, but what happens with this global warming and then the climate changing or in the oscillations in the temperature in the different time scales? We observed in the Mediterranean, the thermohaline circulation is, as I mentioned in the beginning, Atlantic waters coming in, sinking down, and then leaving the Mediterranean as an intermediate water. And there were two places in the before where the deep waters forming. But in the 1991, here we showed that the surface waters density increased abnormally in the beginning of 1990. And then this deep water formation area shifted to the Aegean Sea. And then Eastern Mediterranean deep water now started to form in the Aegean Sea. This was because of the drastic drop in the air temperature in this area. And then not only this one, also the internal dynamics of the Mediterranean played a role. Here is the history of the deep water formation in the Central Aegean. As you will see here, this is the temperature, this is the density, and this is the salinity. If you look at here, density of the surface waters in the 1992, between 1990 and the 1995 reached to maxima, and then this was deeper than the deep waters of the Mediterranean, and all the Aegean waters sunk to the bottom of the Eastern Mediterranean. And then we observed the EMT like not as strong as the EMT in 2007, and then the 2016-17 period. And here, if you look, this is the resulted in the temperature decrease, but not only, also you need to increase in the salinity. And there are two ways increasing the salinity in the Mediterranean. The first one is the Nile River, due to the dam constructed in the Nile River, increases the salinity of the Eastern Mediterranean. But this is not the simple explanation of this increase in the every 5 years in the salinity in the Mediterranean. How this increase in the salinity occurs, and then how this the process in the 1991 period and then the 2000 period, the 7 period, is affecting the Mediterranean. And in the recent dynamical studies show that in the Ionian Sea, reversal of the circulation from anticyclone to cyclone is playing a key role in the increase and decrease of the salinities in the Eastern Mediterranean. And these Atlantic waters coming in, if there is a anticyclonic circulation, it passes through all the way with the high salinity and then creates a high salinity. This high salinity goes into the Aegean and then this sinks down. But if there is an anticyclone, these waters comes in as a coastal current in the North African coast, through the North African coast, and the low salinity waters forms here, which we cannot observe this deep water formation. In the work of our colleagues from Italy showed that this happens almost every 5 years. And this is surprisingly, not surprisingly, but interestingly, this changes in the sign of the gyre in the Ionian Sea is due to the internal dynamical characteristics of the Mediterranean. But this is, if this salinity increases, we will observe the deep water formation, and then there will be a good ventilation of the Mediterranean waters, and then there will be increase in the outflowing Mediterranean waters into the Atlantic Ocean. If we observe the low salinity, there will be no deep water formation, and there will be a less. So we need to understand what will be in the future climate changes, the situation in these deep water formations in the Mediterranean. If you look at here, there is a recently published article on the modeling, how this, the future, what will be the future projections of the temperature and the salinity in this region and the deep water formations. Here, if you look at here, this is the moderate, the projections in the climate through the end of this century. Here you see there was this is the temperature in the Adriatic, this is the Aegean, this is the Levantine, and these are the salinities. If you look at the salinities in the Levantine basin, you will see that there was these formations in the Aegean is every 5 years happening, but after this will increase, and then we will start to observe the high salinities through the end of the year. But the projected dense water formation will be reduced by 75% for the Adriatic and 83% for the Levantine. That means we will have less deep water formations in the Mediterranean. means that this will result in the less water going into the Atlantic, and then this will affect the global ocean circulation. This needs to be understood, and then how this will affect the global thermohaline circulation, which is called the conveyor belt, is will be the scientific challenge in the next decade. And if I finish my talk, warming and stratification are becoming a major environmental stressors in the Mediterranean and the world. Changes in the thermohaline circulation may decouple the upper layer from the lower layer through and this may inhibit the ventilation, and the Mediterranean can be different. As I showed you in my talk, the understanding of the history of the system, knowledge on the history of the system, and understanding the internal physical dynamics are essential to understand the effect of the climate change in the world ocean. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Dear Şükrü Beşiktepe, thank you very much for your very nice and informative presentation. I am sure that the knowledge and experiences in your presentation will help and support young and senior researchers from Islamic network states, and then they will develop their academic career on this issue. Thank you very much once again for your very nice presentation. I would like to invite next speaker. He is Xingzang Chun. Before his presentation, let me introduce him to you. Okay. He is a young scientist working as a university lecturer in the Marine Science Program, Faculty of Science and Marine Environment, University of Malaysia, Terengganu from 2020. Works mainly focusing on regional climate change, tropical meteorology, and climatology over the Southeast Asia and Malaysia region. Involved in Cortex Southeast Asia project for almost 10 years. Published more than 30 articles in scientific journals and close to 800 citations. Dr. Xingzang Chun, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. So may I share my screen? Okay, so it's an afternoon here, so very good afternoon everyone, and maybe good morning to others. So the name is Xingzang Chun here. I'm presenting to you a work, probably not that quite related to how climate change affect ocean, but more towards on the data that and the efforts that have been placed in this region in trying to address the regional climate change. So we have this project known as Codex Southeast Asia. We have been ongoing for more than almost 10 years now, producing this high resolution data for free for the general public. So we are going to introduce a little bit about this Codex Southeast Asia project. So introduce a little bit what are the data that are available and how these data are being used in addressing climate change issue on the terrestrial, example, agriculture in the agriculture field, as well as some oceanic processes over the Malaysia region. So as we know, climate disaster is the bringer of this destruction, right? In fact, over our region, in Southeast Asia, flooding, like typhoon, it's not uncommon, right? So we often have flooded, for example, like this figure shows that severe flooding in the Jakarta, Indonesia region, whereas our Philippines, our neighbors tend to be frequent by this typhoon, which caused a lot of destruction. And recently over Malaysia region, so we have a big flood around this 2021. It destroyed the whole houses, leaving only the staircase, right? So we are actually at risk. Southeast Asia is actually one of the region at the mercy of this climate risk. This is actually a report generated by this German watch, indicating that over the Southeast Asia region, we have a lot of countries that are at risk facing the problem with this climate disaster, right? So we are knowing that the climate disaster caused a lot of destruction, and we are in the region that having the highest risk in this climate change. So we wonder how the change in the future climate will happen, and how should we respond to this change in climate? And then any adaptation and mitigation that we should come up with to address the issue so that we can minimize losses and damages caused by this natural disaster. So of course, to do this, we need climate change information, right? So probably most of us already know that if we want the climate change information, so we can very conveniently use the product from this CIMIT, the coordinated decoupled model intercomparison project. So they produce a lot of this climate change simulation using these tools, which actually is a general circulation model. Short form is GCM. In a layman term, it's just a virtual representation of Earth in the computers. So whereas we input those greenhouse gases concentration scenario, we can obtain from the IPCC. So from this AR6, the newest one is SSP. So we input this greenhouse gases concentration into this software known as this GCM, the virtual representation of Earth, and then we can produce future climate. So using the information we can obtain from this CIMIT GCM, so we can conduct this climate risk vulnerability assessment, and eventually our work can be used for decision making and policy drafting policies at the higher level, so that we can better address this climate change risk. Of course, we know that GCM are very useful, but it have one trouble, it have one issue, that this GCM have very cost resolution. So we can see from this figure on the right, on the left-hand side, we can see this is how GCM represent the topography setting in Southeast Asia. Right? So we can see that this is one of GCM, of course. So we can see the green boxes are actually representing the land, whereas the blue boxes or the blue grid represent the ocean. Right. So from this figure, we can see that we're supposed to have a small strait that separate Malaysia and Indonesia, but in the GCM, it's just one big piece of land masses. Right. So the topography are actually oversimplified. This thing is fine if the region have a large landmass like Africa or even the Indochina region. But for us in Southeast Asia, we have a lot of small water bodies. This can create a big issue for us, right? And then we know that running GCM is not a very cheap exercise. In fact, it's very expensive. We need to have supercomputers to conduct the simulation, right? So while GCM is, therefore GCM being run at this cost resolution is good in simulating these large-scale climate features. It is missing these final details that we need over Southeast Asia. So for us, we require high-resolution climate change information, right? So of course, running GCM at a higher resolution is almost impossible due to this its very expensive nature. And there are two approaches that we can use to downscale to obtain high-resolution information from GCM. So for those who don't know, the two approaches is dynamical downscaling and statistical downscaling. So for statistical downscaling is the easiest, whereas we are using the relationship between the predictor and predictant for us to come up with a statistical model, and we can predict, utilize this model to downscale climate change information from GCM. And for the dynamical downscaling approaches, so we are actually running a limited area model inside this GCM. So running the model at the limited area, so we are no longer required to conduct simulation over the whole globe. That's why we can afford to channel the resources to increase the resolution instead. Right? So for example, you can see over this figure, whereas we have this GCM at a cost resolution, so we can nest a limited area model, or known as a regional climate model inside, where so we can rerun the simulation at a much higher resolution, and eventually we can obtain this high resolution climate change information that we so need over Southeast Asia. So the figure below is just a representation how running a limited area model can greatly improve the topography setting in the model. Whereas you can see over the GCM, right, the Southeast Asia is just one big piece of land masses, but for the RCM, we can see that there are clear differentiation between the land and the different land masses. For example, over the Malaysian, over the Indonesian region. This actually highlights that running the RCM actually helps. Running the RCM, we can actually help us to obtain a very much high resolution data, this climate change information. So over Southeast Asia, we decided to take the matter into our hand rather than depending on others to conduct the simulation for us. So we, there's a band of scientists aim to provide the scientists in the region with high resolution data, free. So voluntary, unpaid, and actually fully passion-driven international collaborative effort was established in this in 2012 in Hanoi, Vietnam, known as this Southeast Asia Regional Climate Downscaling Initiative, or the CCLID. Right. So this is a picture those early founders where they took over this Vietnam in this 2012. So this project was lucky that we managed to secure a fund from this Asia Pacific Network in 2013 November. So this fund allowed us to host workshop or training workshop to help us to build up the to have this capacity building in this Southeast Asia, right? And then subsequently, once we secure the fund and we are actually streamlined into this codex. So basically, codex is just like a coordinated effort over the world, where scientists get together to conduct this dynamical downscaling to obtain high resolution simulation out of this GCM. And our Southeast Asia, Codex Southeast Asia officially joined the project as the 14th member. So since this 2012, right, so Codex has already reached the age of 10 last year. So, and throughout these 10 years, there are 2 phases already completed. So the first phase, we started in 2012, ended in 2018. So in this phase 1, so we successfully actually downscaled 16 set of CIMID 5 GCM with these 2 different RCP, the future emission scenario, using 7 different, actually it's a typo, 7 different RCM over Southeast Asia at this 25 kilometers resolution. And after the finishing of this phase 1, he enters phase 2, where we further downscale this 25 kilometer product into 5 kilometer region, into 5 kilometer resolution over 4 region in Southeast Asia. Because we realized that downscaling the information from GCM, from the cost resolution GCM to 25 kilometer is not quite sufficient. So we need some supplementary run, which we can conduct at a much higher resolution of 5 kilometer. And then currently we are entering the third phase, where we will be focusing more on downscaling the CIMID 6 GCM. And we want to incorporate as well the statistical downscaling approach. And we want to pay more attention to this city-scale climate change. Of course, some achievement that is not listed here, the number of articles generated from this project actually drastically increased over this region. And of course, we have contributed quite a number of contributed to this IPCC era 6 and managed to produce numbers of these master and PhD students. Master and PhD holders. Right, the members of Codex Southeast Asia actually, for the first phase, they are actually 14 countries involved with 20 institutions. When we come to this second phase, so we have 7 countries in Southeast Asia, as well as Japan and Australia who join in with 11 institutions. And currently, in our newest phase, we have 8 countries joining the effort, 14 institutions involved. So of course, we are still looking forward for more partners to join in this collaborative effort. Right. So for the first phase, we have generated 16 set of simulation, and we get extra 1 set from this ICTP over Italy. So they are kindly run extra simulation for us. So we have successfully run more than 3,000 years of simulation, 3,500 years of simulation, producing about more than 200 terabytes of raw output. So this data is currently hosted by this RU called Ramkanghaeng University, which every one of us can access freely from this ESGF portal. So if you don't know what's ESGF portal, you can just search this one, ESGF@nsc/LIU. So you can access the data for free. And then coming to the phase 2, so we only focus downscaling the product from 25 kilometer to 5 kilometer over 4 region, which indicated in the black box. Right. So in this, for this phase, the data is not yet available to the public because we just completed it this year. It's in the preparation to make the data available as soon as we can. So moving on to the case study, the the cases of real-world application of this context data. So the first one, obviously, we are using the data for assessment on how climate change can impact the palm oil sector. So of course, we can see, so this study actually focusing on addressing the changes of climate suitability for palm oil growth. So we used some criteria published by this guy's work, the GOR 2000 criteria over Malaysia. So of course, in this study, we did not consider the soil properties and topography structure. Right. So as we can see, even without considering the scenario, we can already see that the palm oil sector actually experiencing the impact of climate change. We can see a large reduction in the area that are suitable to plant palm oil. Then, so under this future climate change, we are expecting that the highly suitable region to plant palm oil will be greatly diminished. In the worst case scenario, it might totally not able to, Malaysia might not be totally, we will not have more areas that are highly suitable to palm oil, but we have some new suitable areas that emerge instead. So of course, I know that this conference is more towards marine science. So I would like also introduce an application where the data was used to study the impact of climate change on the East Coast Peninsula, Malaysia coastal upwelling. So this work actually conducted by my master student, focusing over this area, the East Coast of Peninsula, Malaysia. So whereas we use the data to try to assess how upwelling will change as the climate changes in the future. So a brief result from the work is that we see that under the warming climate, the strength of the upwelling over the East Coast Malaysia are expected to increase. So this increase is the strongest under the worst case scenario compared to that of RCP 4.5. Unfortunately, I'm not able to share more information on this as this work is yet to be published. The student is still working on the manuscript. So I hope we can publish this work soon and share our result with the world. So before I end my presentation, just an ending remark that Connect Southeast Asia actually has been a major success for our region. Right? Despite being free, voluntary effort, we managed to come out with a very comprehensive data. They are freely available to everyone. So just want to recap that you can access this data from this ESGF at NSC. You can just search it up online. Right? So we are currently downscaling this CIMI6 GCM. We are placing focus on urban climate and including this ESD. And of course, we are also exploring the possibility of producing high climate change information over the ocean in Southeast Asia. And this is actually currently under research in this another institute in my university, INOC. Right? So it's currently funded by this Ministry of Higher Education Malaysia under our grant. And of course, we always welcome any personnel or institution who wish to contribute and to participate in these voluntary efforts. Thank you very much.
Dr. Chung, thank you very much for your very nice presentation. We learned a lot of experiences and efforts from your study. And we also learned lots of issues on climate change from your presentation. And your workshop on free high resolution data is also very important for us. Maybe we can collaborate as we can collaborate on this issue later stages. Thank you very much for your very nice information.
Once again.
Thank you. I would like to invite next presenter, who is Devrim Tezcan from Middle East Technical University, Turkey. Before going his presentation, I'd like to give you information about his background. Devrim Tezcan, who has PhD from Middle East Technical University in 2007. His main research interests are marine geology and geophysics, operational oceanography, coastal zone morphology, climate change impacts on coastal zones, seafloor sediment transportation. Currently, he is working as assistant professor in Middle East Technical University. Dr. Tezcan, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me in this INOC symposium. Today, I will give you some examples how the climate change affects the Turkish coastal area. So, first of all, we all know very well that the Earth is warming. So, this is the latest surface air temperature mean relative to the last 30-year average, you can see here. And you can see here that the Europe, especially the Europe, the temperature in Europe is increasing. So the sea surface temperature also is increasing, especially in the Mediterranean. It's reported that the sea surface temperature in the Mediterranean region is currently 1.5 centigrade degree above the pre-industrial temperature level. So it's really hot, especially the easternmost part of the Mediterranean where the Turkish coastal areas is located. The degree is higher than the other regions. So this is the sea surface temperature anomaly map. And here we use the base periods of 1960 to 1990 to compare to the period of the last 5 years here. And we calculated an increase, an average temperature increase of 1.45 centigrade degree. So especially the Black Sea is warmer than before, and the northeastern part of the Mediterranean is warmer than before. So the temperature rise, and the second important climate impact is the global sea level rise. I'm sure that you all know that the sea level rise is caused primarily by two factors related to the global warming. First, the added water from melting land ice, the glaciers, and also the ice sheets, and the expansion of the seawater as it warms because of this increase of the temperature. So the sea level actually, so from the geology, the sea level was about 125 meters below the present sea level during the last glacial maximum, during the last ice age, about 20,000 years ago. And it reached the present day level at about 6,000 years ago. You can see here from this presentation, this is the sea level curve and the depth, this one. However, in the last 150 years, the sea level is rising with a significant acceleration. In the last 20-25 years, the rate of change of this sea level rise is 3.3 millimeters per year. It's really so big. The IPCC reports indicate that the global mean sea levels will most likely rise between 0.29 meters, about 30 centimeters to 1 meter by the end of this century here. This is the best scenario, and this is the worst scenario. But what does it mean, the sea level rise? How this will affect the cost? A good rule of thumb is that every centimeters of sea level rise results in the loss of about 1 meter of beach. As you can see, the shoreline, of course, this is not real, but the coastline will be here in 2030, and in 50 years, in 30 years, the shorelines will come back here. So, how the climate change drivers impacts the marine ecosystems? You all know that the precipitation runoff, the increase of this carbon dioxide concentration, the sea surface temperature increase, the sea level rise, and also the increase in wind wave and storm intensity cause a lot of damage in the coastal areas, such as the coastal floodings, ocean acidifications, inundation, erosion, and the others. So I want to give you some examples in Turkey, but before that, so I want to describe the Turkey. The Turkey has more than 8,300 kilometers of coastline with rocky shore, sandy beach, and also the fertile coastal floodplains. And we have a lot of fragile ecosystems like the seagrass beds, the coastal wetlands, and dunes. A lot of people live along the coast in Turkey. You can see here the population density map here and the coastal areas. And these are the very touristic areas, the Antalya and Mersin, Izmir also. And you all know, I'm sure that you all know that the Istanbul is a very populated area. They are all close to the sea. So because this high coastal population, of course, there are numerous coastal settlements and tourism facilities can be found along the Black Sea and the Mediterranean coast. So it's clear that a changing climate could have devastating effects on Turkey's coastal settlements, infrastructure, and also the ecosystem, the coastal ecosystems. So these tables, this graph is from the Turkish State Meteorological Service report. The frequency and the severity of the extreme events, extreme weather events has been increasing. And this graph shows the yearly numbers of the meteorological disasters of different times since 1940. You can see here clearly that there is a significant increase in numbers of events in the last 20 years, especially the heavy rain, storm, and the others. So this is the spatial distribution of these meteorological disasters in 2021, only the previous years. You can see the coastal area again. Mersin, Antalya, Muğla, and Izmir, of course, experience more events than the other regions. Yeah. This is also from the Turkish State Meteorological Service. Okay, so I want to give you some examples for each of them. So the heavy rains and the relevant flood events are the most serious problem in the last 20 years. You can see in the graphs the numbers of these floods in Turkey. And again, this is the flood distribution map in 2021. Okay? And the coastal area experienced the largest increase in the numbers of flood days, as you can see here. So some examples, the effects of this flooding to the coastal area. This is from 2018, 19, 2020, 2021, and 2022. Actually, this floods inflows carries large amount of sediments and particles to the coastal area, to the sea actually, resulting in extremely high turbidity levels and significant morphological change. The flood water, the other problem actually, the flood water can be contaminated with pollutants such as the agricultural pesticides, industrial chemicals, debris, and of course the sewage. So if this contaminated flood waters enters the ocean, it can affect the water quality and also can destroy the coastal ecosystems, both on land and on sea. So the second important events are the storms. The storms transfer energy from the atmosphere to the ocean, and they drives the mixing of these surface layers. And the storm surge, I'm sure that you all know this, are the change in the sea level that associated with these storms, and they cause extreme water levels and currents. The storm surge here, again, we see that the increase of numbers of events in the last 20 years here for the storms, and also they affect the coastal area a lot. Some examples of this one. The first impact of storm surge is the coastal flooding. Okay, so the waves can can go to the coastal area, and This coastal flooding can result in various environmental impacts on different spatial and temporal scales. For example, the inundation of seawater after flooding can also cause salination in the agricultural areas that results in a loss of productivity for long periods of time. You can see here an example in Mersin. Here, these are greenhouses for the agriculture, and they're all under the seawater because of this coastal flooding. And also the flooding can destroy the coastal habitats, such as the coastal wetlands and estuaries, and also can erode the dune systems. Yeah. Also, this coastal flooding, the storms affect the coast. They can erode the coast, the coastal erosion. Here we have two examples. One is from the Black Sea, as you can see here. The storm surge waves actually erode about 1 meter of beach here in Karasu. The another examples is from the Antalya. This is the famous Konyaaltı beach and things. You can see in 2009, because the beach is very wide, but today it's most of this beach was eroded, so we have only a very narrow beach here. Tornadoes, actually, we don't have a statistic for tornadoes in Turkey because it's very new for us. We start seeing tornadoes in the last few years. These are the extremely dangerous and violent rotating air columns, and they can damage everything in their path. And examples from the Antalya airport in 2021, as you can see, the damage of these tornadoes on the plane, this one. But the tornadoes can also destroy the coastal infrastructures and also the cropped areas here. This again from the Antalya. And these are you can see the greenhouses for the agricultures. They are so close to the sea, and the tornado is here. So the tornadoes are also very important, how to say, a threat to the coastal area. The next one is the forest fires. Actually, this map shows the forest fires in the 2022 in Turkey. There are many spots in the coastal area, you can see here. But this example is from the Marmaris. A forest fire in 2022 actually had burned a large area, as you can see here in this satellite. But the forest fire, how can affect the coast? Actually, this is unfortunately the erosion again. The loss of forest caused high rate of the soil erosion. You can see here all this area is burned, and this is here. And this eroded soil is transported to the sea with the rain and the streams. Up to 2 meters thick mud layer, you can see the soil transported in the sea. And up to 2 meters thick mud layer are reported in the coastal area, covering all this, unfortunately, this sea bottom biodiversity here. Another effect of the climate change is the invasive species. Actually, these alien species can adapt easier than the local species to the increase of the sea temperature. And this is the richness map. It shows the distribution of the marine alien species that are introduced from the Suez Canal to the Mediterranean Sea. And they invaded a lot of region in the Mediterranean, as you can see here. And the density is higher, unfortunately, along the Turkish coast. We have the puffer fish and lionfish problems here, and also the jellyfish problems in the coastal area. So what we did was to understand the vulnerability of the coastal areas in Turkey against the sea level rise, we applied an indexing method. Okay, so this is a coastal vulnerability index, is one of the most commonly used and simple methods to evaluate the coastal vulnerability to mainly the sea level rise and their effect. So we applied this method to the Mersin, Adana, and Hatay coasts. We used the 7 physical parameters: the slope, the geomorphology, the erosion rate, the geology, mean wave height, mean tidal range, also this relative sea level rise, and 4 socioeconomic parameters: the protected area, the roads, the population density, and the land use. And based on this analysis, the CVI analysis, half of the coastal area of Mersin, Adana, and Hatay cities, you can see here all this one, are high to very high vulnerable to the climate change, actually. Especially the flat areas. Here we have these flat areas, actually a huge delta here. Especially these areas are most vulnerable to the sea level and also the other events. We should be prepared in these coastal areas to the impacts of the climate change as soon as possible. So I think the 16 minutes, thank you. So I want to thank you all again for inviting me to the symposium. Thank you.
Dr. Tezcan, thank you very much for your presentation about climate change on Turkish coasts. From your presentation, we understand that the situation is very important for us to think about climate change deeply, and you show us very important photos about the paradigm shift. So thank you very much once again. I'd like to remind all of the participants once again that you can send your questions to the using Zoom chat box. We will ask all questions at the end of all presentations. So we are waiting for your questions. I'd like to invite the next speaker. She is Dr. Dinan from Iran. Before her presentation, I'd like to give you information about her academic background. Dr. Dinan is an associate professor of environmental planning in Environmental Science Research Institute of Şehit Beheshti University in Tehran. She got her PhD in environmental planning from University of Tehran in 2007. Her work focuses on environmental impact assessment and also on environmental damage cost assessment. She is member of Iranian Academy of Science and also member of board of Iranian Association for Impact Assessment. She is also a member of Iran's Supreme Environmental Protection Council from early 2022. Dr. Dinan, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kavas, for introducing me, and thank you for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to have a presentation about damage cost assessment of marine ecosystem according to climate change. Excuse me. Okay. Let me turn off my camera for better connection on internet. Thank you. As we know, human activity increased the greenhouse gas concentration and it increased the air temperature. So we have increase in storm frequency, increase in CO2, decrease of pH level, and more acidification. Also, it can cause sea level rise. As the previous colleague mentioned, there are 4 different scenarios for global mean sea level according to IPCC about the global mean sea level rise. for the end of this century. It's predicted that at the end of this century, the sea level will increase between 29 centimeter or 9.1 meter, which can lead to many different risks. As you see in the diagram, climate change can have some impact on both human and natural systems. Also, the impact can be transferred to ecosystem services. Climate change has the potential to accelerate ecosystem degradation and reduce the efficiency of ecosystem services. The diagram shows in this the function and the structure of marine ecosystem can produce marine ecosystem services. The ecosystem services refer to benefit that people derive from the ecosystem, and this benefit can increase the human well-being. But we have four kinds of ecosystem services. The first one is provision service, like fisheries production, photosynthesis, and nutrient uptake by phytoplankton. Plant or animal provide chemicals for developing or producing pharmaceutical or industrial products. But unfortunately, the climate change can reduce some provisioning services. For instance, fish production can be affected by climate change according to change in water temperature or dissolved oxygen. Also, climate change can change the species richness and distribution of their breeding period or season of maturity. Also, acidification of ocean is an obvious concern of rising CO2 level, which numerous negative effects on living organisms, especially the organism who has shells with calcium carbonate. Furthermore, coral reefs were seriously subjected to the effect of climate change by high temperature and eutrophication. It can affect on organisms those directly depends on coral reef habitat. The second services is regulating service. Marine ecosystems play an important role in climate regulation, as area around the sea always have better air quality. Also, a large part of carbon sequestration is done in marine ecosystem by phytoplanktons. Preventing disturbance of and flood is other regulating services. Also, nutrient cycling like nitrogen and phosphor is also very important services that create by marine ecosystem, and water purification is other important services that serve by marine ecosystem and has an important role in reducing the pollution level. Unfortunately, the regulating service doesn't have a market value despite their important role in marine ecosystem. So most of the time, damage of degradation to these services doesn't consider in cost-benefit analysis. The next services is cultural services, environmental knowledge and education about marine ecosystem and the wildlife via media and others, something like television and something social media, and also marine tourism are the most important cultural services of marine ecosystem. Also, some aesthetic value from marine species and wilderness area are other cultural services. Climate change can reduce the tourist attraction of marine area. For instance, loss of coral reef has a negative impact on cultural services. And the last services is supporting services. Each marine species needs a special habitat. Habitat function of marine ecosystem create a special habitat for each species. It can create genetic diversity of marine ecosystem. Also, marine ecosystem have a nursery function. It provides a specific breeding place for different species that can be damaged by climate change and endanger the species' life. So if we want to assess the damage of marine ecosystem, we need a framework. As we show in the diagram, First of all, it's necessary to identification of damaged ecosystem services. We should investigate the different change in ecosystem services during the determined time, for example, for 1 year, 6 months, and so on. Then we should determine the change in each ecosystem services, regulation services, supporting services, provision services, and also cultural services. Then we can evaluate the quantitative change in goods and services by creating map of ecosystem services, and at the end, we can calculate the damage cost. Okay, if we want to assess the damage cost, we should recognize the economic value, and we should know about the different kind of value. For instance, we have two kind of main value. The first one is use value, and the second one is non-use value. Use value is the value we put on goods and services because of their use, because it's important for us for our use. But about non-use value is the value that we put on goods and services not because of their use, but for their reason, like their existence or keeping them for next generation. So this is some example about mapping of ecosystem services. For example, at the left side, you can see a map of habitat formation. Some points with darker color show the more habitat formation, the more value for habitat. And at the right side, it shows the map for nutrient cycling. This map can help us to calculate the damage cost when we create map during a different time. And this is necessary to have some approaches to measuring and using marine ecosystem services value and damage cost assessment. As you see on the screen, we have many different methods for calculating the damage cost. For example, we have expenditure measure. Expenditure measure is the method we consider the cost of compensate or reduce the effects of climate change as damage costs. For instance, when we build a dam or for dealing with raising the sea level, we can calculate the cost for dam construction as the damage cost of climate change. Or, for example, we have some market method. In market-based method, we consider the loss of market value for goods or services as damage cost. For example, a decrease in fish catch due to climate change. And also, the next one is reveal preference method. In reveal preference method, we use change in people's behavior to assess damage. For instance, when the travel rate to a marine ecotourism area reduce according to climate change, we can estimate the damage by travel cost method. Or when the price of property around the area decrease according to risk of sea level rise to climate change, the reduced price can be considered as damage of climate change using hedonic method pricing. The next method is a stated preference method. This method is based on surveys in which people express their willingness to accept for reduction of ecosystem services due to climate change. For instance, there's willingness to accept for extinction of marine species. In this, we use the hypothetical, not based on people's real behavior, but according to their willingness to estimate the damage cost of some services. This method is often used to estimate the non-use value, like existence value or bequest value of some ecosystem services. And the last method is value transfer. In this case, we use the damage estimate for an ecosystem for other ecosystem without the need for primary valuation or damage cost assessment. For instance, using the WTA or willingness to accept for the extinction of one species for another area. In this method, ecological similarity of two region is very important. Also, the similarity in socioeconomic condition and similarity in maybe economic condition and in social similarity is very important. And also the correctness of primary estimation is very important. For conclusion, I want to say, unfortunately, the damage cost assessment by climate change in marine ecosystem has faced many problems in the different countries. For instance, lack of basic information, lack of experts, difficulty in damage cost assessment method, lack of attention to non-market value, and low priority of environmental issues in each country can be create some problem. But nevertheless, damage cost assessment can help policymakers to take the right decision. Also, knowing the amount of damage caused to marine ecosystem services can be used in allocating the necessary funds for the compensation or also fund allocation for adaptation with climate change or mitigation of greenhouse gas. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to hearing from you.
Dr. Dinan, thank you very much for your presentation. In your presentation, the topics like mapping marine ecosystem services and approaches to measuring marine ecosystem services for climate change were very important for us to know and think deeply. Thank you very much for your presentation once again. I'd like to invite the next speaker. He is Barış Akçalı, Dr. Barış Akçalı from Dokuz Eylül University, Institute of Marine Science and Technology. Before going to his presentation, I'd like to give you information about his academic background. He graduated from Ege University, Faculty of Fisheries in 1996. Then he completed his master's education in 2000 at the same university, but from the Institute of Science Aquaculture Department. Afterwards, he completed his PhD education at Dokuz Eylül University Institute of Marine Sciences and Technology in 2006. He started to work as a research assistant at the same university, same institute in 2002, and was appointed as a lecturer in 2011 at the same institution. He is still working as a staff at this university. Before working in this university, he worked in farms that raise various sea fish. His research fields plant habitat mapping his research fields in marine macroalgae and seagrass meadows, as well as on marine biodiversity, alien invasive marine plant habitat mapping. Between 2001 and 2005, he participated in training and research activities at various universities in France. He took part in many projects for TÜBİTAK, European Union, and other ministries, public institutions, and companies. He is an experienced diver with a 3-star diving badge and variety of underwater specialties. Dr. Akçalı, floor is yours for your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your role. I will be a bit quick. Marine plants can be roughly divided into two groups as macroalgae and seagrass. The number of species of macroalgae is high, but the area and biomass they cover is low. Seagrass meadows, on the other hand, are represented by few species and cover large areas. There are 5 types of seagrass around Turkish coast and throughout the Mediterranean. While 4 of them are native seagrass species, Halophilus stipulaceae is a Lesseps seagrass species that entered the Mediterranean via Suez Canal. Seagrasses have structures like roots, stems, leaves, flowers, and seeds, just like terrestrial plants. This is the difference from macroalgae with seagrasses. The evolution of seagrasses, there are a total of 60 species of seagrasses in the world seas. Seagrass meadows passed from the seas to the land during the Silurian period 400 million years ago, and then reverse back at Cretaceous period 100 million years ago from land to the sea and formed seagrass meadows and mangrove forests. It is estimated that the area covered by seagrass meadows is between 0.12 million square kilometers to 0.6, as you can see on the map. And in recent studies, it has been reported in scientific publications that seagrass meadows are among the oldest living species, especially Posidonia species, as you can see on the publications. What is their effect? Seagrasses are ecosystem engineers. Thanks to their long leaves and large areas they cover. They prevent marine and coastal erosion by regulating waves and currents. They keep water clear by keeping suspended solid materials. They produce oxygen. They consume carbon dioxide. With the photosynthesis, they are important carbon storage habitats. They form feeding, sheltering, and breeding grounds for other organisms. They are extremely important habitats for fisheries, and the fallen Posidonia leaves form deposits called banquettes on the shoreline, while these areas are created habitat for many creatures, and they also prevent beaches from erosion. While seagrasses cover only 0.5% of the world's seas, they store 20% of the total carbon produced annually. Seagrasses store carbon 35 times faster than tropical rainforests. And in 1 hectare, seagrass meadows store twice as much carbon as terrestrial forests. As you can see on the table, tidal marshes, mangroves, and seagrass meadows are very high capacity of carbon sequestration. Here is another example of the numbers with the seagrass and pristine Amazon forest, carbon storage capacity. And globally, there is an evidence that seagrass meadows also tend to decline at high rates, as do other important habitats such as coral reefs, rainforest, and mangroves. The reason for this depends on natural and man-made effects. In one publication, Waycott et al. In 2009, they calculated that the seagrass meadows have declined at the rate of 7% since 1990. In another report of the United Nations in 2020, it was reported that an area of seagrass the size of a football field disappears every 30 minutes. Posidonia, which is an endemic seagrass species for Mediterranean, protected by national and international agreements such as Habitat Directive, Barcelona Agreement, Water Directive, etc. Seagrass are among the most productive populations in the world. On the average, taken into account net primary production, the production per unit area of seagrass population is about 1,000 gram dry weights per square meter per year, which is equivalent to about 15 tons of carbon dioxide per hectare per year. Seagrass have lived on the coasts for thousands of years and raised the seafloor about 1 millimeter per year, forming thick carbon deposits, as you can see on the photo. Posidonia oceanica meadow mat was reported 11 meters thickness in Spain. It is something like that. The mats are these formations. And this is correspond to an accumulation of 0.18 tons of carbon per square meter over 6,000 year period of the region. It was unbelievable. Seagrass meadows are defined as carbon sinks with high carbon accumulation capacity in the sediment over millennia timescales. Carbon can be retained for very long periods in the mats formed by seagrass meadows. This makes plants into carbon-rich ecosystems in the biosphere. The biodegradation of seagrass meadows is slower than other organisms due to the low nutrient content in their tissues. In addition, they are ecosystems that can store carbon for a long time since they are not consumed in large quantities by herbivorous creatures. The total carbon stock of Posidonia oceanica mat in the Mediterranean basin scale, where the surface area covered by Posidonia oceanica is estimated between 1.0 and 1.5 million hectares. It is equivalent to carbon emissions of 1 to 3 years by all Mediterranean countries. The partial degradation of these mats and the accompanying release of this carbon into the environment will have negative consequences on the current climate change. It is important that Posidonia oceanica meadows have huge long-term carbon stock accumulated over thousands of years, as well as mitigating global climate change. However, this stock is kind of like a time bomb. In areas where Posidonia oceanica meadows have disappeared, the underlying mat now becomes vulnerable to erosion. In this case, with various effects, encouraging trawling, currents, and wave movements, etc., it will mix with the environment as carbon dioxide, accelerating the climate change similar to the fossil fuels. Seagrass meadows have very high light requirements. While 1% of surface radiation is sufficient for the other macroalgae, this rate is 10 to 37% in seagrass meadows. For this reason, clarity of the water is extremely important for seagrass meadows. High temperature also have adverse effects on seagrass meadows. When the critical temperature thresholds are exceeded, shoot deaths and population declines occur. The rise in sea level observed since late of 20th century may also explain the recent declines in the lower limit of distribution of Posidonia oceanica meadows. Any rise in sea level, even in few centimeters, will cause this boundary to recede towards the coast, which can reach several meters. Considering that sea level rise will continue and accelerate, this will result in a general upward retraction of Posidonia oceanica meadows. In the Mediterranean, mean precipitation volume is declining, but by the contrast, the frequency of extreme precipitation events will likely increase. During extreme precipitation events, heavy currents can adversely affect seagrass meadows, resulting in burial or exposure with sediment increase or decrease. In addition, with this change, the intensity and frequency of wave movements may affect the coasts more and cause erosion. Seagrasses ecosystems that work as carbon storage. Seagrass meadows store approximately 15% of the carbon stored in the seas. So, while climate change and other global impacts require international actions, regional management practices can help mitigate local impacts. For the management of seagrass meadows, we should reduce the nutrient and organic inputs from agriculture, aquaculture, or urban sources, preventing sediment increases, preventing mechanical damage through boat anchors, trawlers, fishing gears. Local control can be carried out by creating suitable growing conditions for seagrass meadows. What are the pressures on seagrasses? As the other speakers told about it, the arrival of alien species, intensive coastal use and construction, destruction of sea floor by illegal trawling are some of them. Like in this video, wastewater discharges increase the amount of suspended solid materials, causing a decrease in light required for photosynthesis and increase in epiphytic organisms due to an increase in nutrient salt and decrease in enzyme activities with increasing pollution, causing the destruction of the meadows. As you can see on the video, this wastewater discharge pipeline worked till 7 years, and you can see the seagrasses around it with a lot of epiphytic organisms, and they are getting decreased. Aquaculture activities also cause similar results like wastewater discharges. This is an aquaculture form, and under the aquaculture form, you can see the vanishing seagrasses. Another pressure is the change of unsuitable and incorrectly positioned mooring systems on the seabed. This chain is damaged the seagrasses like a sickle and vanished the meadows and replaced by alien invasive species. This is a Colarpa cylindricae covered all the seabed. Both articles also cause damage that will take many years to return in the Posidonia meadows, which grow 1 to 6 centimeters per year horizontally. Areas that are heavily used by boats can be identified and appropriate eco-mooring systems can be placed there. But placing the eco-mooring system is not enough. These systems should be developed in a way of management. If meadow maps have been created, these can be presented to sailors via mobile applications, providing information and awareness, and recommending captains not to anchor in these areas. First of all, seagrass maps should be created. However, in countries like Turkey with a very long coastline, this is a long-term process. Side-scan sonars, multi-beams, underwater cameras, divers, aerial and satellite photographs are used for mapping. After the maps are created, monitoring stations can be set up in appropriate places to monitor the effects on meadows. Measurements can be made with the deep transect method to determine the condition of seagrasses and the environment. I will be a bit quick. Various restoration works on meadows in the world have gained momentum in recent years. Successful results have been begun to be obtained, especially in species such as fast-growing one like Zostera or Cimodocea. There are studies done by germinating seeds or planting shoots taken from a donor area in a way that does not affect the area. But Posidonia oceanica is a bit hard one. It's a slow-growing species. That's why we should take care a lot about it. This is an example which is carried out to enlarge a port in Monaco. The Posidonia oceanica meadows in the area where the port will be built have been moved to a nearby area with a very technical and professional team. Two different restoration techniques were tried. In the first method, the dismantled heaps were placed in pits dug into the sandy area, as you can see. In the second method, it is placed in a concrete enclosures, like see in your video, but the success in these concrete enclosures is not so well. They all disappear. At the end, seagrass, mangroves, and wetlands, it has a great potential to help mitigate climate change, its effects on coastal areas. They are dense carbon sinks. It is effective in protecting the coastline from sea level rise and storms increasing with the climate Strategies based on these habitats to adapt to sea level rise will be much more cost-effective than cement-based artificial solutions, especially when it comes to the plant capable of clonal expansion, such as seagrass meadows. Thank you for your attention. I will be on time, I hope so. Thank you, Chairman.
Dr. Akçalı, thank you very much. Very nice presentation, especially your videos were very excellent to see. Thank you very much for sharing us. And in your presentation, you said that, and you defined seagrasses as ecosystem engineers. I really enjoyed this definition. Thank you very much for also this definition. It also shows us how Posidonius species help Earth to sustain living things in proper life. Thank you very much once again for your very nice presentation. I'd like to invite the next presenter. He is from Malaysia, Dr. Khairul Nizam Mohammed. Before going to his presentation, I'd like to give you information about his academic background. Dr. Mohammed is currently serving as senior lecturer of the Faculty of Forestry and Environment at University Putra, Malaysia. He obtained his Master of Science on Marine Science from University Kebangsaan, Malaysia in 2005 and completed his PhD in Earth and Marine Science from National Oceanography Center, Southampton, University of Southampton, UK in 2012. He is currently working on biogeochemistry of trace metals at coastal water. He also studies the impact of climate change on trace metals at Malaysia coastal water. At the moment, he obtained a grant from Malaysian government and his university. Dr. Mohammed, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, coordinator. Hello, Assalamualaikum. I'm Khairul Nizam bin Mohammed from Faculty of Forestry and Environment from Malaysia. And today I would like to share a part of my study or research in the coastal area, especially in Malaysian coastal area. Okay, my topic is the effect of northeast monsoon to the viability and toxicity of trace metals at Malaysia coastal water. Okay, as we know, now we are facing with the climate change. In the climate change, we will have global warming, ocean acidification in the ocean, where they have a changing of the ocean chemistry that will give a big impact to the ocean environment. Okay, and this climate change also affects the local climate, such as Malaysia, which is effect to the coastal area. So as we know, in Malaysia, our coastal area has experience with the north monsoon system, where we have a north-east monsoon during the early November to the March, and also we have southwest monsoon in April to the June. Okay, so this monsoon system will be affect the chemistry of the coastal area in Malaysia, and it brings a lot of the rain along the east coast of the peninsular Malaysia. So the figures shows during the monsoon system, northeast monsoon, the east coast of the peninsular Malaysia have a lot of rain, and it also gives impact or change the chemistry of the coastal water. Okay, what happens when we have a northeast monsoon in the coastal area? So this monsoon brings a lot of the nutrients from the bottom to the surface of the ocean, surface of the coastal area, because of they are not too depth. So it's about less than 30-meter depth. So this monsoon can make the coastal area become more productive because it brings up all the nutrients, all the trace metals from the bottom to the surface, and also it will increase the concentration of trace metal at the coastal area, and this will enhance the growth of phytoplankton during the northeast monsoon. And one other thing is, during the monsoon, not only bring the productivity to the coastal area, but it also change the physical chemical parameter of the seawater. So this is the result of the data that presented by our group in 2015, it compares the condition of coastal area in Malaysia coastal area between before monsoon, which is pre-monsoon, and after monsoon. So they highlight that during this monsoon was bring the changing of the chemistry and also the physical of the water column along the coastal area. And from the statistic analysis, it suggests that they have a statistical significant difference between pre-monsoon and monsoon events. So it gives a question, what the effect of monsoon to the productivity or to the viability and toxicity level of the trace metal in our coastal area. As we know, in the water column, most of the trace metal is bind to the natural dissolved organic ligand. So this natural organic ligand makes sure that all the trace metals such as iron, copper, zinc will be remain in the water column and give food to the phytoplankton for their growth. Okay? And the chemistry of the organic complex, which is the binding between metals, trace metals, and the organic ligand, is very, very unique because it can affect by the pH and also can affect by the salinity and DO. So the binding between metal and dissolved organic ligand will give us information on how the bioavailability and how the toxicity of the metal. Because from the bioassay experiment and theoretical model, from the model study, they suggest that to identify the biogeochemistry of trace metal or to identify the bioavailability and toxicity of every metal, we need to run the cessation analysis rather than total concentration. Okay, so chemical cessation analysis can be conducted by using the voltammetry or electrochemistry approach. In this analysis or in this methodology, we not measure only the total concentration of metals, but we also measure the species of the metal, which is bioavailable or toxic to the organism. So we use the voltammetry, the instrument voltammetry, that apply the electrochemistry approach to measure every single ions of the every metals in the seawater without change a lot to the chemistry of the sample. So this is very important because without changing any chemistry of the water, we can get the correct and accurate data of the cessation. So the figure shows how the importance of the voltammetry method in measuring bioavailability and toxicity of the trace metal in the seawater. In ocean, as we know, most of the ferrum exists in ferrum 3, and this ferrum 3 will bind to the dissolved organic metal, or we call L ligand, to give the bioavailability for the other organisms. So most of the organisms that living in the ocean will uptake ferrum from this ferrum 3 ligand. Okay, so this ferrum ligand will give more nutrients and also give food to other organisms for their growth. Ferrum is the needed element used for the phytoplankton growth, and also uptake of ferrum is actually depend on bioavailability of dissolved ferrum 3. So in this figure, it shows that total dissolved ferrum is nothing, but the presence of ferrum 3 species is more important in order to identify how available of trace metal of ferrum to the organism. So this shows figures how the reaction between ferrum 3 to ligand. So this ferrum 3 will bind to the dissolved organic ligand to become a complex natural organic ferrum ligand. So this natural organic ferrum figure is very, very important in the biogeochemistry of every element, because most of the element, which is almost 99% of dissolved ferrum, is strongly complex by natural organic ligand in the water column. And this organic ferrum 3 binding ligand increase the solubility of dissolved ferrum and prevent oxyhydroxide precipitation, which will decrease the ferrum bioavailability. That means if ferrum bind to the ligand, so the ferrum can remain in the water column for the long period. Okay? And it also can avoid precipitation of ferrum to the bottom of the ocean. And this can give a good nutrient to the organism that living in the water column. In addition, this organic ligand significantly increase the residence time of dissolved ferrum within the euphotic zone. So this is very important for the productivity of every coastal area. In the absence of ligand in seawater, the solubility of ferrum will be decreased. So if the ligand present less, so then the solubility of the ferrum or any other trace metal in the ocean will be decreased. So this in terms of the ferrum, but in terms of the Cooper 2 speciation, so for the Cooper 2 speciation, Cooper can either be bioavailable to the phytoplankton, and at the same time, it also can be toxic to the phytoplankton. When it will be toxic and when it will be nutrient, it will be toxic if it's present in 3 Cooper 2 ions. So by presence of the natural organic ligand or the by form of the complex Cooper 2 organic ligand, same as a ferrum, this will make sure that the ferrum cannot exist in the free Cooper 2 ion, because free Cooper 2 ion will be make us toxic to the phytoplankton. So here we can say that another function of natural organic ligand is to make sure that some of the trace metal that exist in the water column cannot be exist in the free ion, which is make a toxic to other organisms. But a few years ago, we have studied about how the effect of the pH to this complex, which is complex of ferrum 3 ligand and Cooper 2 ligand. So we study about the effect of pH by measure the sample to different pH of the water sample, and from that we found that the decreasing of pH, which is we try to relate the situation with the ocean acidification, where now we are facing with ocean acidification, where our pH ocean become decreased because of the saturation of CO2 in the atmosphere. So we apply this information to the lab stimulation by changing the pH of the sample, and we check what happens with this organic complex trace metal. And what we found, decreasing iron Cooper binding by organic matter at low pH. Once we measure the sample at a low pH, we see that the binding or the presence of organic ligand, ferrum organic ligand, and Cooper organic ligand become less. So this is very, very important, because it can make the Cooper become toxic, because if Cooper not exists in the complex, so it will be present in free Cooper 2 ion. So it can make a toxic. So we can say that the decreasing of ocean pH can make Cooper complex become toxic, because most of the Cooper 2 will exist in Cooper 2 free. However, this study was in the lab testing, not applied to the environment. So further study and extending it to the real marine environment will be provide further information on this relationship. So then I take this opportunity to apply this idea to the real environment condition. So in Malaysia, we know that we have a monsoon system. So from the previous, we know that the monsoon also can change the chemistry of the coastal water. For example, pH and temperature. And this pH and temperature changing can be effect to the presence of the complex ferrum 3 ligand and couple 2 ligand. So it may be expected that our seasonal northeast monsoon system will affect the bioavailability, which is we refer to the ferrum 3, and toxicity level, which is we refer to the ferrum 2 at the coastal area. So our approach, so this is our objective, to identify the effect of northeast monsoon on the trace metal bioavailability and toxicity level at Malaysia coastal water. So our approach is we do a series of sampling at a few selected stations along the east coast of Peninsular Malaysia. We do the sampling before and after, which is pre-monsoon and after monsoon. Okay, and then we analyze the sample to measure the complexity of dissolved ferrum 3 ligand and couple 2 ligand before and after. So the data we have, we compare what happens to the complex. So we assume before and after it can show the effect of the monsoon to this complex. So this is an instrument that we use, which is we call voltammetry, and this voltammetry 797 series. So this voltammetry has 3 electrodes, and this electrode helps to measure the sample with less modification. And this one is the UV digestion. So all the seawater sample must go through the UV digestion to take off all the organic substance that's present in the water sample that will be affect our result. And this is the method that we apply. For total dissolved ferrum, we apply the method that has optimized by our clip, Ramjan and Mohammed. And for the total dissolved copper, we apply the method that optimized by Gordon and others 2018. And this is the example result from the instrument, which is we get the ferrum concentration and copper concentration. So this ferrum represent the ferrum 3 concentration, copper represent copper 3, copper 2 concentration. So how we measure the concentration? By using the standard addition method. For the speciation, we extend our analysis to the speciation. So for the speciation analysis, we need to have we need to prepare our sample overnight, which is the seawater sample will be buffer to pH 8.05, which is similar to the buffer of similar to the ocean pH, to make sure that the sample is naturally. And then after that, we add with the organic ligand, natural synthetic organic ligand, to compete with the natural organic ligand. So it's try to challenge the natural ligand to bind with the new synthetic ligand that we added. And after that, we sub-sample to a few, about 12 bottles. And this 12 bottle, we add different concentration of copper and ferrum, which is it's like a titration. And then after overnight, because the reaction is very, very slow, naturally, so then we overnight the sample in the room temperature, and after that, we measure with the voltammetry. And from the voltammetry data, we apply using the Vanderbilt linearization model to get the concentration of the ligand, the strength of the binding, and also the ligand concentration. So this is example data that we have from analysis, which is the data from April 2016 and to April 2017, and also from the Angkor Island. So from the data, we found that the changing of physical chemical, which is salinity, between P1 and P2. So this is our study area, which P1 is more acidic, but the activity of copper 3 is more higher. And if we compare with other sites, which is less salinity and more wide range of the pH, we found that the the activity of C2 plus become more lower, which is more toxic. Okay, more Cooper 2 present. Okay, however, when we compare the Cooper 2 concentration, it is very, very low, which is 10 power negative 21 and also 10 power negative 22. And from comparison with other studies from all the world, we found that our data is agreed with other published data. And from this, we can say that strong complex ligand exists in our coastal area, and free copper ion value found below the threshold value, which is double from the toxic level, and should not generate induced toxic effects to the biota. And this suggests that Cooper 2 in the area is more function for bioavailability, not to the toxicity. Even the monsoon changed the chemistry of the coastal area. From the second study, we compare the study area between seasons, which is pre and post monsoon. So we do a series of studies and different seasons. And from the data, we found that Cooper's, the slightly similar log K and Cooper 2 plus concentration. Log K represents how strong the binding, and this, a strong complex ligand was determined in our sample for all sampling samples and all series. And Cooper 2 concentration does not generate induced toxic effects in the biota. And also the statistic analysis show that no significant effect of the monsoon to the Cooper 2 ion fixation, and suggests that the role suggests that the importance of organic ligand that buffering the Cooper 2 ion present and allow Cooper 2 ion to be bioavailable to the organism. And for the column 3 fixation, we do a series of study, which is in October 2015 and April 2016. And the same thing, we found that a slightly similar log K and condition of the ligand. And if we compare from this data, we found that it also shows that the presence of the strong ligand in our area. And the current output from this study, we can say that the new northeast monsoon system increased the distribution of dissolved metal and organic ligand concentration in coastal water, but it not changed the organic metal ligand binding strength and ligand saturated state, even though it has changed the physical chemical parameter. This was happened because the presence of high concentration of organic complex that present in coastal area. Okay, and this study was funded by the Ministry of Education Malaysia from the FRGS grant, and we have collaboration with the Marine Park, Malaysian Marine Park. Okay, I think that's all. Thank you.
Dear Dr. Nizam Mohammed, thank you very much for your presentation, especially biogeochemistry of dissolved trace metals in seawater and how these dissolved trace metals affects climate. These kind of issues are very important in your presentation, and thank you very much for providing us this kind of information in your presentation. So I'd like to invite the last speaker. She is Nazlı Mert Özüpek. Before going to her presentation, I will give you information about her academic background. Nazlı Mert Özüpek received her Master of Science degree in Biotechnology from Dokuz Eylül University, Turkey in 2014. She completed her PhD in Oncology from Dokuz Eylül University in 2023. Her studies are based on the investigation of various biotechnological activities of secondary metabolites from different organisms by in vitro and in silico methods. She is still a postdoctoral researcher at Dokuz Eylül University, Institute of Oncology, conducts research on the anti-cancer activity of different secondary metabolites, Caulerpa species. And She is receiving project grants from the Scientific and Technological Research Council of Turkey and Health Institutes of Turkey. Dr. Özipek, floor is yours for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Çavaş. Hello, everyone. I'm very glad to be here this event. I'm Nazım Özipek from Dokuz Eylül University Institute of Oncology. My title is Biotechnological Strategies to Turn Invasive Coelarpa Species into Economic Advantage in the Context of Climate Change. In this speech, I will give you a brief story of turning invasive Coelarpa species into economic advantage. Seaweeds are of great importance because of their polysaccharide, mineral, and vitamin contents. Also, they are potential antioxidant sources. They are one of the most important habitat-forming species in the Mediterranean coastal areas, and they play a key role in the preservation of marine biodiversity and carbon sequestration. Generally, the introduction of the tropical invasive macroalgae of the genus Coelarpa in the Mediterranean Sea was recognized as a significant environmental concern due to its modification of benthic communities and reduction of biodiversity on large spatial scales. The impact of climate change is important to develop and implement a functional alert system. The introduction of a tropical invasive Coelarpa in the Mediterranean Sea was recognized as a significant environmental concern due to its modification of benthic communities and reduction of biodiversity on large spatial scales. They are threatened by climate change factors such as organic matters, high algal biomasses, more nutrients, and heat absorption. Non-indigenous species are becoming invasive and harming native species due to climate-driven phase shifts. Climate change makes the species more invasive and changes the native ecosystem. Also, this problem affects the secretion of the secondary metabolite levels and also secondary metabolite profiles. Biological invasion or bioinvasion is successful spread of a species into a new habitat by human activities such as transporting, climate change, etc. It damages the ecosystem and biodiversity, and also creates some health, ecological, economical, social problems. In United States, from the end of the 20th century to 2017, bioinvasion cost $1.28 trillion total US dollars. An annual average of 26.8 billion US dollars, and it gradual increases. Average 162.7 billion per year. Coelarpa is an invasive species from class Ulvaficae. Kolos means stem and arpos means creep. Genus Coelarpa contains 96 species, and in Mediterranean ecosystem there are 2 invasive and 2 non-invasive and 4 invasive Coelarpa species. In 1896-69, Coelarpa invaded to Mediterranean by Suez Channel, and it spread 12 countries. Coelarpa cylindricae is one of the most common species, and it contains, as you can see from the slide, 4 different body parts. In 1996, Coelarpa was observed in Tunis, and it started to expansion. The vector of entry of Colarpa cylindricae into the Mediterranean is still unknown. It could be Lesepsian immigrants, or it could be a hybrid between Colarpa racemosa turbinata and an unknown tropical cultivar, or molecular analyses are assumed until a possible source population is identified around the Australia-Pacific region. Marine blue biotechnology is of great importance for using the secondary metabolites or chemicals found in marine sources. Horizon projects cost 95.5 billion euros until now. In 13 September of 2012, Blue Growth notification was published, and according to this notification, evaluation of blue biotechnology options to use sustainability of diversity of marine life in the maritime sector for its contribution to the European economy. Then, a European Commission at 2022, it's reported that many molecules of interest from biopharmaceuticals or nutraceuticals still need to be discovered from biomolecules derived from marine organisms. Plant metabolites fulfill a multitude of functions during plant life cycles. There are metabolites, these metabolites divided into two classes. Primary metabolites, I mean sugars, proteins, organic acids are necessary for survival, and they play a role in maintenance, growth, and development. The secondary metabolites are of great importance for protection, signal, and defense themselves from the pathogens. These compounds can be called as immune system of plants. There are more than 35 secondary metabolites found in Colarpa SPP, and 13 of them are druggable according to the ADME results. Colarpin is a bisindol alkaloid-based secondary metabolite found in Colarpa. It's mostly secretes from Colarpa cylindricae, but also it could be found in different algae species from rhodophytes or Sargassum platycarpum species. Colarpin's molecular weight is 398 gram per mole, and it's a red colored secondary metabolite. It's also classified as secondary pigment. The main aim of this speech is finding an alternative way to use these secondary metabolites as technological products. Since colarpin, structure of colarpin is similar to auxin, it's first used as a plant growth stimulator. And then its antiviral activities against bovine viral diarrhea virus and herpes simplex virus, anti-chikungunya virus, and anti-SARS-CoV-2 activity were identified. Colarpin is also a monoamine oxidase inhibitor, thus it could be used in treatment of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. Anti-tuberculosis activity of colarpin is also reported in the literature. Colarpin also has anti-cancer activity against different cell lines. The anti-cancer mechanisms are still elucidating, and colarpin also plays a role in inhibition of invasion, migration, and apoptosis in colorectal cancer, and they play inhibitor role in oxidative phase of pentose phosphate pathway enzymes in colorectal cancer. The other secondary metabolites found in Colarpa species are colarsin and colarpenine. They have telomerase inhibition activity. They also inhibit both dog gastric and human pancreatic lipase activities. Thus, it could be used as an anti-obesity drug. They also have antimicrobial and antiviral activities. Furthermore, they can be used as adsorbent of pollutants such as boron or methylene blue, etc. Not only the secondary metabolites, but also the extracts and the body parts of Colarpa could be used as technological products because of their different biological activities, such as tyrosine phosphatase 1b inhibitor, or they have antifouling activity. The extracts have antifouling activity. There are some patents about the usage of Colarpa extracts, such as it could be used in shampoo or skincare materials. In conclusion, invasive species in the Mediterranean can be used to discover new bioactive compounds to be evaluated in pharmacy and medicine. Because of the climate change, during the adaptation period to invasive species in their habitats, their secondary metabolites may differ in concentration and modification. Instead of eradication, the search for the treasure of the invasive Colarpa cylinderaceae and the use of the chemicals as a marine medicine are suggested. In vitro and in silico-based studies targeting clinical translation or turn into economic advantage of the compounds obtained by blue biotechnology should be increased. This is the last slide of my speech. These are my studies about the biological activities of colarpin found in Colarpa. Thank you very much for your attention.
Dr. Özipek, thank you very much for your presentation on blue biotechnology issues and important species such as Colarpa. So thanks once again for your presentation. Okay, maybe I can change my screen. Just a second. Okay. I couldn't receive enough question to ask to participants. I think all of the presentations today are very clear, informative, and understandable. For that reason, unfortunately, I couldn't get any question to ask our speakers. I think we came to the end of a 6th version of Inter-Islamic Network on Oceanography Special Symposium series. I'd like to thank all speakers for their great contribution to the realization of this event. At the same time, I would like to thank all participants who participated this event, and I wish them to be with us in the future INOC activities and trainings. I believe that this special symposium of INOC shed a light on the impact of climate change on the marine ecosystems. I am sure that policymakers, scientists, science and university educators, researchers, and also society can provide contribution for solution of climate change problematic issue. For example, we can easily limit greenhouse gas emissions, protect marine and coastal ecosystems, restore marine and coastal ecosystems, improve human adaptation. Of course, we can increase investments in scientific research. In this framework, INOC will continue to work with its network on organizations to find alternative solutions. I believe that this support and help from network will develop future cooperation and collaboration. Before ending, I would like to thank Sharmin Açık Çınar for her continuous support and help for INOC to make this special symposium series happen. Thank you, Madam President, for your great support. And finally, I can show my screen in order to thank all of the speakers. On behalf of Inter-Islamic Networks, on behalf of Inter-Islamic Network on Oceanography, I'd like to thank Professor Dr. Shahbaz Khan, Professor Dr. Şükrü Beşiktepe, Dr. Chun Jing Chang, and Assistant Professor Dr. Devrim Tezcan, Associate Professor Dr. Nagme Mobarkhe Dinan, and Dr. Barış Akçalı, Dr. Kayrul Nizam Mohammed, Dr. Nazlı Mert Özüpek. And as a final remark, please don't forget to keep visiting INOC website and INOC social media accounts for the symposium and training information. And we really came to the end of this symposium. And from Dubai, United Arab Emirates, I would like to thank once again for all participants today. And I wish you a very nice day to all of you. Thank you and bye-bye.